Welcome back. This is Grishma Tamang, and today I'll be talking about how we can embody the truth and return to our natural state, the unconditional bliss. Before we start on this topic, we'll do a quick recap on the last few topics in my last previous videos. The first one being about the unconditional bliss itself, which is our natural state, and everything else is all conditioned emotions. The second video we talked about how what prevents us from getting back to that natural state, and that is of course the conditions itself. And what controls the conditions? It's the ego and the illusion of separation, which we talked about in the third video about awakening and realization that we are all from the same source. We might have different forms, but ultimately we all arise from the same source. It's like the example of the wave and the ocean. The wave arises is the ocean. Sometimes the wave, if we think the wave is separate, that's us thinking we're separate to everything else. So the awakening is about realization that everything is all one, and we're all interconnected in that manner. So before we go into embodiment, which is about integrating that truth into our daily life, but before we go into that, let's talk about the truth. Okay, so the truth, a lot of different words for it. It's the best way I can explain is that if something is not, there is no multiple perception of it. So for example, if there's a color and the color is red and someone says it's blue, what's red or what's blue, that's open to anyone's perception. Okay, so what color is it really? We don't know. Honestly, we don't know. We might think that it's red, but we really don't know. It's interesting because there is like spray painters that paint colors. Before they paint the color blue or red, they have to put that undercoat, which is like that beige color. So everything is in that color originally, and then from there the added extra coat of colors become that form. So essentially, what color is it? Like, what's the original color? You could say it's the beige or no color at all. So the truth is that unconditioned state. That everything else, like my form, for example, the clothes, everything else, all the conditioned is what makes that form. But the truth is being that I arised from a vibrational energy that we discussed in the previous videos, and everything else in existence and in presence is all from that vibrational energy. So that is the truth. So embodying the truth means that having that realization in your daily life. Okay? Very difficult because whenever we live, especially as a conditioned form, as a human being, we forget about the truth. We forget about the truth, that we are one. Our mind takes over, the ego takes over, and we are playing this this dream. This based on what we perceive, which may or may not be correct. So that's really the reality as I've been living, and a lot of people I realize is also living in that way. To be free from that that sort of living is to say that that's breaking through the illusion of the separation that we think that we're different from the truth, which is that the same source, but in reality the truth is that we're not separated. We're all one, just with different forms. Just like the wave. Wave has different forms, but ultimately it's the one ocean. Okay? So embodying that is quite difficult, especially if we have a lot of conditions. In the previous video, we talked about how the conditions lower our consciousness frequency. Okay, so let me talk a bit more on that. So think way back. So we've got the vibrational energy where all particles, everything arises from this source. It's vibrational energy. Okay, we'll talk about in the other videos what's even beyond the vibrational energy, but for now we'll stick with the vibrational energy being the where all the particles and everything arises from. Now, vibrational energy, when it moves, okay, it's energy. It's energy. Of course, we can't perceive it with the conditioned eye, but when you look around, everything is patterns of energy woven together to form particles, which are woven together to create this form that finally we see as the final product. But the raw material is that energy. So the energy is not something that transforms into something else. No, the energy is within us, within everything. So a good example would be, imagine those snow globes that has like the round is got, when you shake it, the snow comes in. So imagine that. Imagine the whole everything inside that globe is the vibrational energy. Okay, so it doesn't mean that just that person has it or the snow has it. The whole field, the whole circle has that vibrational energy. So it's always there. It's what moves everything, what powers everything. There's a lot of different terms for this vibrational energy. A lot of religious and spiritual circles will name it differently. Some religions would call it the Holy Spirit, or the key, or some will just call it the force. There's so many different words for it, but ultimately it's that energy when it's moving around in presence. That is all that vibrational energy. Now, once the vibrational energy goes into in our experience, I can only talk about our human beings. Once we goes inside, actually not inside, but human being as it is. Once we are using our mind, then it becomes consciousness. Okay, if we're not using the human mind, then we're that pure vibrational energy, and that is called awareness. Okay, so awareness is the pure, really of everything. What we see is really all awareness. Later on in the other videos, I'll explain about where does awareness arises from, but in this video, we'll just stick with awareness being everything as it is. Once the awareness has gone into a human mind, it turns into consciousness, the human consciousness. So the human consciousness filters that awareness, which is unconditional. The awareness is unconditional. When that goes into human body and mind, it's consciousness. So based on the level of consciousness, whether it's lower consciousness or higher consciousness, that is the state that particular human being will be in. And so it's fascinating because what drives that consciousness, I mentioned in my previous videos, was the emotions. The emotions is what drives this consciousness to lower or higher. So if you really think about it, our human mind, we are in a way very disadvantaged in a way where because of the condition that as soon as we are brought into this world and we adopt the form, our identity, our society, conditioning, all that has already set up these sets of circumstances and conditions, and the emotions will come out of that if those conditions are not met. So right from the get-go, we've lost that that awareness, that pure vibrational energy. We've lost that, and it's been converted to a consciousness. And if we're living in a great identity, then unfortunately the consciousness will be lower, which means that our state is lower. We perceive everything in a much lower state, and that lower state, of course, the relevant emotions is fear, anxiety, worry, judgment, all that. It's a lower frequency, whereas the higher ones will be more, the highest, or I wouldn't say highest because it's our natural state, is the bliss. The bliss, the unconditional bliss, is that state where it is the state. And the reason why it's so natural is because that is the state of the awareness, the pure vibrational energy that everything arises for. That feeling, that energy, what that feels is actually the state of bliss. So the bliss is our true energy that we arise from, and it's only because that energy has been transferred into a human mind, being consciousness, and then the frequency of the consciousness. So essentially, to embody it, you have to first know how to work with our consciousness. The good part is that just being aware that, okay, we have this level of consciousness, and if we're in a lower frequency, then we're going to feel more, our state is going to be more of survival, more fear, more worry, whereas if you're in that a bit higher consciousness, then we'll be more closer to our original state, the bliss. So just being aware of that can make a big difference, especially when it's the awareness, because when we're aware, that's when we are assuming our natural state. So when we don't have these, have you ever, a good example is like, when we get stressed out, and we're under deadlines, and we just have to do it, we're in a hurry, we forget so many things. Why do we forget? Is because our consciousness level has been brought down to that level, so our state is like of panic and rush. But when we go on holidays and we're just relaxing in the beach or in a nice scenic place, and we don't have that, our mind is so much clearer. Why is that? It's because at that time of when we're in that relaxed state, we return back to our state, not the condition, the consciousness bring the frequency down, none of that. So we return back to that. So that's essentially why and where we need to be, to return back to our original state. So understanding that really does help out. A guide that I follow is the Purification guide. So the conditions that, these are conditions that we weren't brought in. It wasn't, I apologize, it wasn't, it didn't come naturally from us. It was integrated into our lives throughout our upbringing. So throughout our lives, if we were raised in an environment where we had to constantly meet expectations, that's creating the conditions that we need to be in that, to have that condition at all times. Or if we're in an environment where we didn't get that appreciation or that gratitude, so it's created that condition within us, and that goes for countless. Later on, I'll do a video of all the common conditions that us as humans go through, and then I'll give explanations on each of them and how we can purify them. But the next path is the purification path, which is to purify all those conditions. Because in our previous videos, we talked about the unconditioned state of bliss. We talked about the what controls it, the awakening. But the awakening is really just the beginning part. It's not something like, wow, it's getting there. No, it's like, it's great that we realize that the oneness and the interconnect of all existence. It's great, but without embodying that truth in our daily lives, it just becomes knowledge, and might be wisdom that you can explain, but the ultimate goal is to be in that state of unconditional bliss. Okay, and that can only come from awakening, then to purifying all the conditions that we've gathered and accumulated through our lives. Once those gets purified, then embodying the truth becomes second nature. Okay, it's second nature because we've already reached that original state that we're in. In other words, we got rid of all the conditions that we've accumulated, and it's interesting because our human body works in a very similar way. Like example, when we are going for a run, if our body is not conditioned for running, when we run, what happens? We feel pain. We feel pain in our legs. Our muscles hurt, our heart hurts. That's a way of the body and the mind telling us that, hey, you're not conditioned for this. So then it gives you that pain to either to stop or to motivate yourself to get better and then improve those conditions. Okay, but interestingly enough, most people, when they're training and they feel that pain in the body, they realize it and they know that, okay, this is a temporary pain, and next day it might get worse, and then it will heal and you'll get stronger. So people understand this when it comes to physical training. Now, when it comes to emotion, it's exactly the same thing. There's conditions. So just like how the body is not conditioned for running, if the body and the emotions, and all the emotions is stored in the body as well, and the body has a memory, as we all know. So if the circumstances and the situation is not meeting the condition that you have accumulated, then the same thing, the body is going to give the emotions. The only difference is that instead of being in your physical body, you feel it in your heart regions and your lower belly, and it's like, and the feeling is painful, yes. But essentially, going back to the truth, is that all these sensations, everything arises is that vibrational energy. Okay, it's just that our consciousness has converted that vibrational energy to feel that sensation in our body. So when that happens, instead of thinking like the way we should with our physical training, the running examples, that okay, this is temporary, it will go away and it will heal and will get better. But instead of that, when emotion hits, most people, even myself in the previous, will see that as, oh no, what's happening? I'm useless, or I'm not that, or I need to be better. And that amplifies that energy more and more, and it just makes so much painful, and you feel like you're identified. So that's what happens to the condition when it becomes like the emotion. But essentially, the practice is exactly the same thing, like being aware that, okay, this is a sensation, I'm not conditioned or for this particular situation, or I'm conditioned in a different way, and I'm feeling this sensation is because the mind and the ego is trying to warn me to avoid that situations, or motivate me to be conditioned into that new situation. So it's that's all it is, So if you understand that, okay, that these are sensations and it will pass, when you just see that and see that emotion not as your identity, not of who you are, but just the vibrational energy flowing through you, flowing through your form, that which arises, and eventually, just as I explained in other videos, all vibrational energy is oscillating. So there's always a beginning and an end, and it's always going up and down. So same as that that emotional trigger that we feel, that will also pass. So a lot of people will call this acceptance, accepting, and that's essentially what it is. Just like when we're running, and if your body's not conditioned to run a marathon and it's aching, we accept that situation, right? We go, okay, that's quite painful. I'm not, cut up for this. I need to train more. See, that's acceptance, and then that emotion does not grip you. So essentially, we're using the same method in when we get emotionally triggered. So when your partner or your friends or your peers judge you for something that you've done, and if you feel that pain, instantly recognize that pain and you go, okay, I'm not conditioned for this, or there is a condition holding me to feel this pain. There's a condition in me, and that's probably because we have this condition of perfection. Because maybe in our past, in our upbringing, we've been either discriminated or we've just been not appreciated, and because of that, there is that condition of wanting to belong, and these are the conditions. So there's quite plenty, countless of different conditions that we've accumulated through our lives. Some way more than others, some less than others. So if you have a lot of conditions as you're growing up, especially if you feel it like right in the bottom of your where your stomach is, that's like the very that's a very painful one. I understand that's very painful, but these are conditions that are stored, and just like doing squats or exercises to improve the condition in your legs so you can run that marathon, we just got to improve that condition. And the best thing is these conditions, we don't have to do anything to improve it, because remember, these conditions were add-on, it was added to our natural state. That is not our condition. It was just something that was perceived and brought into it. So all we have to do in this case to dissolve these conditions is to accept the situation. The condition is just a condition, and the situation is an event that will always, it's not permanent, it's always temporary. And accepting the situation as it is, and knowing that there is always a beginning and an end. So it's applying the truth into every of your conditions. That will, what it does then is then the nervous system, the ego, will be disengaged, because they see that you as awareness, the pure vibrational energy, has accepted that condition. Okay, and because it's conditioned, the ego does not need to come and motivate you to get better. So that way, let's grow up the group, and that's one condition. And as you go through your whole life, meeting head on with these conditions and accepting them for what it is, the ego will slowly start to lose its grip to motivate you to fix that conditions. Because remember, these conditions, there's nothing to fix. Everything is perfect the way it is as the truth. Everything is perfect. It's a condition that makes a situation either good or bad. Like yesterday's good could be tomorrow's bad, or yesterday's bad, today's good. There is no, good, what's bad. These are all conditions, and they're illusions, because everything is as it is. So understanding that, and knowing and being aware of your conditions, simply just to be aware of it and knowing that it's fine. This is not me. It's happening to this form, but it is not me. And one of the biggest conditions that we have growing up is our identity. This is very hard, and probably one of the last conditions to crack before we can really embody the truth. The identity. When we came into this world, the name Grishma Tamang, you a male, you have to be in this certain way, you gotta reach a certain stage of in your life by this age, you gotta get married, you gotta have kids, all these conditions, right? So the identity of who you are, so that's the biggest thing, because you go somewhere and if someone makes fun of you or says bad things, nasty things, if you have that sense of identity, then of course that sense of the ego is going to come and give you that fire, gives you the anger to motivate. So you change that situation, the condition that I'm not this worthless person that you think I am, But if you really think about it, what's controlling that? It's the conditions and then the ego manipulating that. So identity is a huge condition, So that's one of the last ones that we'll have to eventually let go of that conditions. Now, I know it might sound scary that losing your identity. What does that mean? If you lose your identity, who are you? You're no one. Like, it might feel like that, but believe me, once the embodiment stage comes and you are returned back to your original state, and you're where you feel as the vibrational energy, your true nature, everyone's true nature, and have that embodied bliss. Once you're in that state, identity or not, it does not matter. Why? Because you'll be in such a good state, you'll feel like everything is perfect, there's nothing wrong with anything. At that state, what is the identity? Why do we need identity? We assume identity, in the condition where we assume the identity, so we feel at a place, we belong. But when you're in that unconditional state of bliss, everything is you. You don't need to belong to anything. Everything is really you. So the whole perception changes. So the only reason that the fear of losing the identity is so strong is because the ego holds onto it. It does not want to let that go of that. It's afraid of that. It's afraid of the death, and a lot of spiritual circles will call this the ego death, or the dissolution of ego. But this is essential, because without that ego and the conditions that you have, you cannot move past to the next stage. This is where countless spiritual seekers or religious figures, they will get to a state where they have tremendous wisdom. They've understood the truth so well. They can, but the conditions that they have inside them has not been purified. And what I mean by purified is like just returning back. It's like a rewire of the whole your nervous system and your of your conditioning, just rewiring it back to the original state. So a lot of very respected spiritual figures, if they haven't dissolved those conditions, all that knowledge, all the wisdom will not get anywhere. The path is the end goal is to get to that bliss state, and to get to the bliss state, you have to not only realize that you are the one, the source, the vibrational energy, but also it's actually integrated with your body. Very, very important. The body is what we navigate this world with. If we didn't have the body, then we'll just be returning back to our original state. But the body is what gives us this experience to feel, and the vibration energy has to be merged with our body. The body has the consciousness, the vibration energy is the awareness. When those two merge, then it becomes unconditional. Unconditional as awareness, but with the human body. So you have like the best of both worlds. I think some religious circles and spiritual call it the heaven and earth. When the heaven and earth meet, heaven is the awareness, consciousness is the earth. And when they meet, then it's power. So it's amazing. It's amazing. To understand the truth. So then I can't stress how difficult it is, because it's something that you can't just hide away. You have to actively look for it. You can't just go, okay, I know the truth now, oh, I'm too afraid of facing that condition because that condition is painful. I understand, like you have to face your fears, you got to get out there, but just being aware and accepting these conditions, and you might have to have that scenario or even actively search for that scenario 2 or 3 times. The first time you feel that trigger and it's like, oh, it's deadly, you can't think, and you might not be able to sleep for a day or two. Then you do it again the second time, and then the second time you notice that the ego's grip is lower, it's less, and the third time it's like even less, and then the fourth time the event happens but there's no emotion. That means your consciousness frequency is stable, it's stabilized. So when that happens, and then you can bring in the wisdom and the truth that all is one. What you're seeing is just your reflection, and I think you better it's just a reflection. Then it maintains that state. It maintains it. It doesn't bring it down. So that's the difference between like it's active. It's the path. It's not something that you meditate in caves for days and days and eventually get it. Yes, that one helps you be stable, but in the modern world where we need to interact, we need to go to jobs, we need to work, we need to meet our neighbors, in these cases having that may not, and if that's the thing, like either way you'll be at that unconditional bliss state regardless. But then it becomes more about love, because for myself, I have families, you have families, we all have families. It's great that we're feeling this state of bliss, but that's only me. Our loved ones, our family members, our friends, they might not be in that state of bliss. They might be still conditioned and going through that level of suffering, and not knowing why they're doing things. We can, once you're in that state, you see that they're trapped in that illusion. But you can't. The only way you can help them is to support them, be with them. Let them know that it's okay. What's happening is okay, because it will pass. It will pass, and as long as they're aware of it, the next time it gets stronger. It really helps. I think females do a great job, because when they have a problem, they will have a conversation with their trusted friends, and when you're having a conversation, you are essentially bringing awareness to that condition. So essentially you're healing yourself just from talking. You're bringing awareness. So whether you talk or you sit down and you meditate, and just feel that that energy, that stress, that pain in your body, and just accept it, just without clinging to it and thinking that is you. And these are it's a very simple step. Like that's all there is to it. The hard part is just really searching inside and finding out what is your triggers. What are your conditions. I had heaps, countless. I had to write a book on each of them, and then actively face them. And some of them were very, very hard, especially the identity part, or belonging. Some of them are very, very hard, but it's worth it. It's worth it, because then you'll truly realize that it was those conditions that was holding you back. It was a chain. It was it was transformed you from your original state to something. That it's like the identity is like the identity is illusion, if you think about it. Like, what's good or what's bad. So it's fun. It's fun to play the game, and when you're winning. But when you're not winning and the conditions are right, we all know how painful it is. And sometimes it's just not worth it. So either way, everything is perfect the way it is. Everything is great. The conditions is also not a problem, because we all eventually lose that conditions. We can lose it at a young age, or at when we're very old, in our deathbeds, we might lose that. Eventually, it will always dissolve, one way or another. But I feel that while we're here, and we're fit and able, we appreciate our lives by having this earlier. So then we can go and really live the life that we really want to do. The physical body, of course, is a vibrational and has a beginning and an end. So it has its limitations. So having this truth and wisdom and embodied of your natural state of unconditional bliss, it's great. But if we can't fully experience this world with the able body that we have, it's different. It's different. So let's all return home. Let's return home. Let's go all the way, and while we still can. And can only imagine. I can only imagine how lives will be when there's many fellow human beings that have reached this unconditional state of bliss. Because it's unconditioned, everyone will be in the same page. There is no right or wrong. Everything will just be as in harmony. Just it's amazing. It's amazing just to think about it. But in the next video, I'll talk more about embodiment, and what it really feels like to be embodied, and how we can embody it. For now, we just need to think about the conditions that are holding us. And in my later videos, I'll talk about all the different conditions, and one by one how we can dissolve them, in the most direct way that I know. But until next time, thank you.